Boy, oh boy, man, tight end sucked last week. Well, maybe we could find someone better this week. But before we get into the stardom system for tight ends for week 6, what's crack-a-lack, and it's your boy Broshmo. Just in case you did not know, so go ahead and leave a thumbs up if you enjoy the content and become a bro and subscribe. I'm constantly pushing out content, constantly, which means frequently, which means a lot. So tight end, man, last week was pretty rough for tight end. But yeah, I mean, there's better options this week. We saw some weird names in the top, like as far as top tight ends last week that you won't see this week. Let's go ahead, let's get into it. Tight end Thursday night, we got New York Giants, we got New England Patriots. Evan Ingram, you almost have to start him. It's a tough matchup. The Patriots are first against opposing tight ends, but I mean, he gets the volume. He's probably the most reliable receiver there in New York. So yeah, you have to start him. And then Matt Lacrosse and Ryan Izzo, man, Ryan Izzo. Really, the Giants are actually pretty good when it comes to not giving up points to tight ends, and I don't trust either of these guys until one or the other kind of separates themselves from the other. They're both sits. On to this Sunday slate of games. Washington versus Miami. And you got Jeremy Sprinkle for, what a name, by the way. What a name. You got him for Washington. He's not seeing a ton of opportunity. And Vernon Davis might be out, but I think Sprinkle has leaped over Davis in the depth chart. I still don't think he's a start. And then Mike Gesicki for the Dolphins. Don't start Dolphins players. That's just not good for your health. Carolina versus Tampa Bay. Greg Olsen put up a ugly performance last week, but Tampa Bay, they're 31st when it comes to letting opposing tight ends score. Guess what? Greg Olsen's a tight end. I think you start him. Let's practice some forgiveness here. Start him. OJ Howard, Cameron Bray. I don't trust him, dude. OJ Howard. Wow, man. He shouldn't be rostered. The Panthers, they're 5th when it comes to opposing tight ends. Yeah, I don't think either of these guys are starts. Seattle versus Cleveland. And I want to start out with saying I might have been wrong. There's every year there seems to be this thing where people jump on the hype of Ricky Seals-Jones because they're like, man, that was it. That was the breakout game we were waiting for. Let's ride him to the playoffs, and then you ride him to a goose egg. Yeah, he was bad. I was wrong about him. Demetrius Harris looks like he is the starter. He saw more targets, but guess what? They're both bad options, even in a plus matchup. Will Disley, though, someone I was right about. Will Disley, he's been a monster. He's been heavily targeted. He faces Cleveland, who hasn't been great against opposing tight ends, so he is a good start here. Houston versus Kansas City. Travis Kelce had a bad game. Forgive him for having a bad game. He had two drops. One of them was a touchdown. That's rough. You forgive him. It's a tough matchup against Houston. They only allow their top 3 when it comes to letting tight ends score. I say you forgive him because he is instrumental. He is right now the top target there in Kansas City. So yeah, forgive and forget. Darren Fells right now looks like he's so touchdown dependent. He has 3 touchdowns on the season. 2 of them came in the last game, and they were the only 2 times they targeted him. I would not start him. I understand that you may have Darren. You might not have Darren Waller this week. Don't be. I mean, you could roll the dice. This will probably be a high-scoring game. You could roll the dice on Darren Fells. I wouldn't. Philadelphia versus Minnesota. Kyle Rudolph, Irv Smith Jr., they continue to be irrelevant. And in a game against Philly, they will continue to be irrelevant. Zach Ertz is the only guy really worth talking about. The Minnesota, they're middle of the pack when it comes to opposing tight ends. Zach Ertz is one of the most targeted tight ends in football right now. Dallas Goedert, though, he's touchdown dependent. I don't think he's healthy. He might be, but he shouldn't be on your roster. We got the Saints versus Jaguars. Jared Cook finally looked alive. He looked alive again. But I mean, this Jaguar team is pretty good at not letting points or not giving up points to opposing tight ends. It's hard to trust Jared Cook, but there are worse plays this week. And if you are that Darren Waller owner, Jared Cook's not a bad consolation prize for the week. Right. Well, okay. So O'Shaughnessy's out for the year for the Jaguars. He was touchdown dependent anyway. Every time I put him in the sit, he would score touchdowns. Just great. What is it? Jeff Swam? Jeff Swam is the tight end there. He'd be probably touchdown dependent as well, but Saints are pretty good at guarding the tight end, so he's a sit. Cincinnati versus Baltimore. Tyler Eifert, CJ Uzomah, man, reared his ugly head. They're splitting targets. I don't like it. You know what? The Ravens are a tough matchup anyway, so you sit both those guys. Mark, this is key right here. Baltimore, especially if Hollywood Brown's not good to go, Mark Andrews looks really good. Mark Andrews might not be good to go. You know who looks good? Hayden Hurst. Hayden Hurst looks good in this matchup. So I think, honestly, if Andrews is out, Hurst is a good start. But yeah, if Andrews is not out, then he is a good start. San Fran versus the Rams. George Kittle. George Kittle's a start. But let's talk about the Rams. It's a little more interesting there. Gerald Everett and Tyler Higbee. Gerald Everett's really looked good these last 2 weeks. He's looked like he's one of the favorite targets of Goff. Higbee, he does see targets, but he doesn't see the type of quality of targets that Gerald Everett has. Like, just looking at Higbee, he had in the last 2 games 10 targets, 7 receptions, no touchdowns. As far as Everett, he has 19 targets, so almost double the targets of Higbee. 12 receptions. He's got a touchdown. He's got more yards than Higbee. He's a bigger threat than Higbee. Everett, in a tough matchup against San Fran, he might not have a great game this week, but I think there's value in rostering him right now. There is big value in rostering him. He's available in a lot of leagues. So go ahead. I would say do that. I don't know about being a start, but again, if you're the Darren Waller owner, go ahead and start him. He's not a terrible start. Austin Hooper against the Cardinals. And I say Austin Hooper against the Cardinals because he's going to have a field day. He is my start of the week. He is going to eat the Cardinals alive. As far as Arizona, it doesn't matter who they have at tight end. They don't pass to the tight ends. It's irrelevant. I'm sorry, Charles Clay. Tennessee versus Denver. Delanie Walker, man. Oh my gosh, dude. Delanie Walker. I really need some water. My throat is recorded a lot today. But Delanie Walker, man, he's only had one reception in the last 2 games. Marcus Mariota, man. I rag on him a lot because I don't think he's a starting caliber quarterback. But now you got to mess with Delanie Walker, who is like one of the most reliable tight ends in fantasy. It's a tough matchup against Denver. Alexander Johnson played very well. He was tested quite a bit in coverage last week by Phillip Rivers, and he came away with a pick. He played very well. I imagine he will be the guy to be guarding Delanie a majority of the time. I don't like it. If you want to talk about Juno Smith, yeah. So I think they're sits, and then Denver. It's a good matchup against Tennessee. They really only allow tight ends to score. So Noah Fant might be a low end start. I don't like it. Jeff Herman's there taking some of the targets. So to me, they're sits, but Noah Fant could be a low end start if you really need someone at tight end this week. Dallas versus the Jets. Jason Witten, man. Tough matchup, but Jason Witten has produced very well this year. Chris Herndon, though, ooh, be on the watch for him because he played very well last year. This is his first game back. We don't know what his snap count's going to look like, but Dallas is 22nd against opposing tight ends, so it's a bit of a risk throwing him in there, especially with how bad that Jets offense has been. But it might be a risk that pays off, especially if you have a tight end on the bye. Herndon might not be a bad start. Pittsburgh versus the Chargers Sunday night. Vance McDonald. Yeah, he had 4 receptions last week. It's not enough to wow me. It's a third-string quarterback. Nick Vanette's basically irrelevant in the offense. I use the word irrelevant a lot because it is what it is. I think they're sits. As for the Chargers, Virgil Green, until Hunter Henry comes back, no tight end for the Chargers is startable, is rosterable. Just saying. And for the Monday night game, we got the Lions, we got the Packers. It's a tough matchup for both tight ends. TJ Hawkinson, don't know if he'll be good to go. If not, then Logan Thomas actually looks like the guy that'll benefit from that. But the Packers are 8th against opposing tight ends. It's too risky for either of those options. Their sits. Jimmy Graham, they're facing the 11th best defense when it comes to allowing points to the tight end. That's a tough one too, man. I think there might be better starts out there than Jimmy Graham. You really have to, though, go ahead and do it, because especially if Devontae Adams is out, then Graham looks a lot better. That's it for the video. I'm sorry I hit my mic, but it is what it is. 7-round mock draft coming out next week. Check that out when it does. And go ahead and subscribe. That way you'll know when it comes out. But until next time, you be easy, my friends. Later.